So good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Ask the Leader event. I'll start off with a little bit of housekeeping that this Zoom call tonight is being recorded. So everybody on the call should be aware of that, and it will be played out again on the Council's social media channels for others to watch. I am Wayne Fitzgerald. I'm the leader of Peterborough City Council, and this is, well, the first in the new year of our series of Ask the Leader for 2022. So again, I think we've got half a dozen questions and probably 3 or 4 people on the call tonight, along with a number of officers, including Adrian Chapman, James Collingridge, Sue Proctor, who's my PA, and from our comms team, Ken McCurlin. There may be other people joining as we go through the process tonight. So I think, have we got Francis Green? It looks like Fran and Nigel on the call there. So I'm guessing that might be Francis Green. Do you want to ask your question, Francis?
Yes, my question is regarding Warrington Sports Centre. Obviously, this has been shut or closed to the public to save money. One question is, why is it only Warrington Sports Centre that's been shut and not Bushfield as well? This facility is very well used and is the only facility of this kind in the north of Peterborough. People struggle to actually use the facility sometimes to get booked on because it's so busy. It's something that people pay for. If there was an issue with it losing money, why were the option of fees not raised, which I think probably people would have been happy to do. The sports facilities still have to be maintained because it's used by the school. So I cannot see how shutting this to the public can save money. It's helping to keep children off the streets. It's safeguarding them. It helps with fitness and well-being. So basically, I just wanted to know why this was happening, yet you're still planning to put a fence around the said school, which a total cost of over £100,000 so far. Safeguarding is not just an issue at school, but it's after school as well. Children that use the sports facilities, this helps with their safeguarding. I cannot see how this can be cost effective. If you're going to employ consultants at £900 a day and assistants at £800 a day to tell you how to save money, I just think it's shocking. I just wondered what your response was to that.
Okay, a couple of things. Firstly, I will read out some pre-prepared notes for you, but your initial suggestion of it being closed to save costs is completely wrong. That is not why it was closed.
Okay.
And I'll expand, or Adrian Chapman will, give some further insight, but that's not the reason. The second thing is, when you talk about Warrington fields and fences, which I'll come on to, you have to understand the difference between capital investment and budget and revenue. So revenue is the day-to-day spending. Capital is things that we spend money on, like buildings and fences and other things. And the other thing about consultants, you'll need to tell me what consultants we have. Why don't you just deal with that first? What consultants do you think we have?
It was on I listened to it. It was like a conversation of something that had been taped, and it was told that you were having consultants to tell you how to save money at £900 a day. And assistants at £800 a day.
I understand what you're talking about now. They're not consultants.
Okay.
What you have to understand is, and I'll set the context for you on that particular thing, because it's not relevant to your questions about Warrington or indeed the fence. The council is under scrutiny by government, and what government have asked us to do is have an improvement panel. And it is a panel of people that have lots of experience in local government. And what they can do, they can look at other councils and use that experience and say, why don't you do this? Because this works elsewhere. And why don't you try this? And also, they're doing a forensic look at the council's spending. And again, using it as comparator evidence that our officers are held to account on for all the money that they spend. So it is not a panel. And let me tell you what the choice was. If we didn't agree to a panel, and it's a voluntary thing that we've done, government would have imposed it upon us, and then all the decisions of the council would have been taken out of my hands. All the other councillors, we would have been replaced by government officials that would come in and remove all the responsibility from us in making decisions about how we spend taxpayers' money. And you may recall a story about Northamptonshire County Council that has now been split up because government intervened there because they were incapable of being in charge of their own destiny. We do not want that to happen in Peterborough. And what I would say to you and anybody else is, government have confidence in me and the team I'm leading at the City Council to get the council through what has been a very difficult financial challenge. We've got something like, 55, 60 million pounds of our money from government has disappeared. And we have the lowest, some of the lowest rates in council tax. In other words, we're much cheaper than anywhere else. And we also have a lot of Band B properties, which attract a lower amount of council tax than, let's say, the average Band D. So that is why we don't have as much money. It's been a reduction in grants. Also, you've got to realize the COVID pandemic has hit our budgets because we rely on commercial income and external income to the council, such as, I'll give you a simple thing, parking fees, or another thing, planning fees. All these things have been hit by the pandemic over the last 2 years now, probably 2 years in March, or February even, when we, more or less now, when we first all started learning about COVID. So they're not consultants. They're a panel that I would say we have to have. Otherwise, I've just outlined the choices for you if we don't have them. So
okay, thank you.
I hope that explains that. It's not something we're doing by choice. And we don't set the fees, what the panel members get. They're set by people in the Department of Levelling Up Housing and Communities. We don't set those fees. Okay, but what I would, just responding, Adrian might come in at the end of it, but what I will ask, or what I will say to you is, in response, since you asked your question, there's been an update on the Key Theatre situation, which I hope you've seen. That's all good news. That's
good news. Yes,
that's where we were hoping to get. The trouble is, as I'm sure you'll understand, until the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, we couldn't make that announcement. But yet we had to stem the losses, which meant, sadly, beginning the process of redundancy at the time we did it. If we didn't do it then, it's just kicking the can down the road. And hopefully the Key Theatre has a bright future ahead of it. And I know the people that we've asked to look after it are putting some good shows on elsewhere. So anyone not attending, the operators, who've not read it, but may see this on a replay, the operators of the new theatre in Peterborough are set to take over the running of the Key. But we were unable to keep it going, as I said, because we found out about the unprecedented losses within city culture, not within the council, but we foot the bill for city culture. So we had to, losing £40,000 a month was not an option. Chalkboard Restaurant and the Key Theatre, Youth Theatre, they'll remain on site now, so that's all good news. No disruption to shows, hopefully. So they've got a superb reputation in terms of delivering theatre and production in the city. Now, moving on to Warrington Leisure Centre, the closure is, of course, only temporary, Francis. I'll explain the reason for you that we were asked to look at it. Adrian, as I say, will comment if needs be. The Vivacity that run all the leisure side of things, which is Aragon, Peterborough Limited, came to us and said they had a shortage of staff. We will need to temporarily close the Warrington Leisure Centre in order to move the staff, and it's mostly lifeguards, I believe, into other venues. And the reason why Warrington was chosen is because it is the worst performing centre in terms of finances. It loses more money than any other. And by the way, I take that at face value, but I have seen the numbers between, for example, Bushfield and Warrington. And on paper, Warrington loses more money. But it wasn't a question of closing it to save money. It was a question of moving the people to other facilities where they were needed to support those, which in turn supports the wider, leisure facilities within the city. So be clear about that. I won't go into, well, I will go into the details, but in 2022, it was forecast a net loss of £190,000 in Warrington, increasing to 205 for 22-23. Those are the forecasts. But again, I reiterate, that was not the main reason, because what the council has to do, it robs Peter to pay Paul by moving, supporting one venue that may make less money and supporting others, by shifting resources. It was the same with the Key Theatre, that all the leisure facilities supports the culture offering within the city. And when that dried up, it put more pressure on those facilities, which makes it more difficult for them to run. But anyway, things have moved on at Warrington also. I've got to pay respect to John and Judy Fox and Steve Lane for working with Adrian Chapman, because the decision was taken quickly. So the Foxes were blindsided slightly, because I know they're great community councillors. But Steve Lane was aware of the decision. It was made quickly. The Foxes, unfortunately, were away on holiday that day. So it happened quickly. But since then, everybody's been working to get user groups continuing what they need to do. And I'm confirming that Monday, the Encore trampolining Reed Karate is on. Encore on Tuesday and Thursday is on. And on Friday, there's trampolining as well. So those are things that are returning with a little help from the school, I believe. But again, I'll bring Adrian in a moment. Warrington joggers are the only group that have not confirmed if they wish to use the facility, but have given fees, and they can be added. They have been given fees, but they can be added within a week's notice. Reed Karate is also to confirm a second session on Wednesdays. That will be closed. So, Adrian, before I just move on to Warrington Fields, do you just want to add anything on what we've covered so far for Grace?
Yeah, thanks very much, Leader. Evening, Fran. I'm Adrian. I'm one of the council's directors.
Sorry, Fran,
Hi.
The leader summarised it really well. I just want to reiterate the fact that this is not a decision either taken lightly or to do with the financial position of that centre. I just wanted to explain that what would have happened if we didn't act. So our operator Vivacity came to us, as the leader has said, to say there's in fact a national shortage, but certainly it's playing out locally, of lifeguards and duty managers. And what they were finding is that across all of the gyms and the pool and the leisure centres and other operations that they run for us, there was such a level of unreliability that it meant that they couldn't plan one day to the next what the opening hours for the following day were going to be, because they had such a staff shortage. They were having to cancel classes at short notice, swim sessions at short notice, and they were starting to see memberships be cancelled. And what would have happened had we not acted is that membership number, which is really the only thing that's keeping our leisure service going, would have just reduced to a level where it makes the whole of the operation unviable. So difficult and horrible as a decision is to make in this situation, and it is a way of trying to stabilise what we've got elsewhere in the city. And as Wayne said, unfortunately and very sadly, Warrington happens to be the centre that is the least performing, which is why we ended up having to go with that decision. I'm thrilled with the kind of hybrid solution we've found. It's by no means full community use, but as Wayne said, the school stepped forward, the Foxes and the Steve Lane, the local councillors, led work with the school and also with the groups that Wayne's mentioned, who have been brilliantly flexible and have come together and reorganised their time so that they can we can get the centre back open just for those groups. It still means hundreds of people now are able to access classes and groups that they were attending before the temporary closure. But by those groups being flexible, it means we can keep the costs as low as possible. And finally, as Wayne said, this is temporary. And as soon as our provider can get staff trained up again, and they're working really hard on that, the centre will definitely be back open. This is not a permanent closure.
I'm glad to hear that, very glad to hear that, because I know that there's a lot of people that are going to miss the chance to, keep fit, and Bushfield is a step too far for them to travel if you're north of the city. I am surprised that it's that sort of figure that it loses when I see how many people do use the facility. Obviously, they don't have lifeguards, I don't think, in Warrington. As yet, we don't have a pool.
They have some of the
I think they're
staff.
trained.
The
That's the
staff are
thing.
qualified lifeguards.
I
That's
see.
right.
So
Yeah, sadly.
Is there a guarantee that that's going to reopen in September? Because obviously I'm on the understanding that the school is going to be an academy from April.
Yeah, the academisation of the school is completely unrelated to the temporary closure. The gym remains our asset. The service is a council service. It's run for us, as we've said, by our operator Vivacity. And in fact, the academy chief executive joined some of the community meetings that I held over the last 2 or 3 weeks, very supportive of the solution we've come up with. But the academisation has no bearing whatsoever on this, or indeed the reopening at the earliest convenience. The school head teacher has been exemplary in trying to be flexible and give guarantees to the community and to the users that he'll do his level best to work with us to get it open as swiftly as possible.
Okay, well, that is good news. Hopefully that will carry on and be before September.
Yeah, I hope so. At the moment, Francis, it is down to be September, but I'll just reiterate the numbers for you. And bearing in mind, there's been some people suggesting, that the numbers aren't accurate, or look, we don't supply the numbers. The numbers are supplied by City Culture's finance team. We don't have any involvement in the preparation of them. An Aragon, Peterborough City, Peterborough Limited, they are separate companies to the council. They have their own finance teams. So the net loss was forecast to be in 21-22, and our year ends in the end of March, is 190,000. And the forecast for the 22-23 year is that the loss would increase to 205. I've seen the Bushfield figures as well, and they're not as bad as this. But what of course has happened is COVID has a big impact on all the council's leisure facilities that are being run by Peterborough Limited. And it's the same on the culture side, although that's being run by City Culture. But as we did touch on that, the in-year forecast for the Key Theatre was £275,000 loss to date to the year end, and it's losing money, and 300,000 plus for next year. And people say, well, you must know about this, or it's always lost money. Yes, but we've always done our best to support it. But what supported it are the gyms and the leisure and everything else, by taking money from the profitable bits of the council's business and moving it to support leisure and culture. And that includes libraries, museums, Flag Fen. All these things have a knock-on effect, because the council's income has gone down, and it makes it more challenging to continue to support them. On your final point, I'll just turn to that. Warrington Fields, not that I've been directly involved, and it's not the council that have been leading the work on that. I understand it to be the school. We've been open and honest, as far as I can see, about the reasons for looking to install a fence, and that primarily is due to safeguarding concerns expressed by Ken Stimson's school. We actually have a question specifically on Warrington Fields, which I'll answer later on. So if you'd like to hear that as well, please stay on the line. You're welcome to stay while when we get to that. But there's nobody from education here. I don't think anybody on here. I mean, Adrian's a senior person. He might, if he wants to comment, he can do. Not going to force him to. I think the public arguments have been well documented about that. Me personally, I'm not involved in the decision or the school. It's my colleague, Councillor Ayres, that has to take that decision. And nobody in the council, wants to do the wrong thing. But they have to listen carefully to all sides of the arguments or points of view. And sometimes difficult decisions have to be made that everybody doesn't agree with. And I'm not prejudging anything, because I think it's subject to a planning application, I believe. Yeah, so I wouldn't comment on it personally. I'm not involved in the planning process, but the planning process is a quasi-judicial system that is all party. It's not the Conservatives or Labour, or it's everybody. I mean, I've been to a planning meeting today, which was a bit of fireworks at that one today. But that's expected as passions run high on all these things. And I had a fence built in my own ward at Longthorpe School, which again was challenging, and there are as many people for it and there are many people against it in many cases. But you have to trust the process and accept the decision of planning, and even though you may agree or may not agree. But that's for the future. But I'll just explain to you again, revenue and capital. So revenue is what we spend on staff and everyday things, providing paying for things. Capital is what we invest in things you can physically go up and touch, or it is something different, and the budgets are completely different. So we mustn't mix up revenue and capital, because our revenue area is very tight on what we can spend, and our capital at the moment is actually frozen, but I think this is already in the budget. So we are down to doing what we need to do or have to do by law or by statutory services, in terms of where we're at the moment. And we're very careful about the money we're spending, even though people think we're not. But everything is publicly available for scrutiny. And what I say to people, if you think you can do any better, put your name on the ballot sheet. And on May the 6th, sell your ideas to the people, because that's what it does come down to. I hope, Francis, that gives you some comfort that what we're trying to do is the right thing.
Yes, I can understand staff shortages, that sort of thing. I don't think that was something that was put across when it was on social media. I think it was put across more as a monetary thing, rather than staff shortages.
Yeah.
Which I think was obviously misleading, but that's what happens. I mean, going back to the fence, obviously I know that it's something under planning, but the fact that they keep increasing the size and the cost of this, I mean, okay, there is different budgets, but it's still money that.
Yeah, no, I entirely agree. Look, if I could talk to people like you on a one-to-one basis, because you sound a perfectly reasonable person, if we as politicians and officers could reach everybody one-to-one, and Ken is a former newspaper journalist, but my old adage, don't necessarily believe what you read in the paper, and certainly not on social media, because there are all sorts of people with axes to grind, and it generally isn't true. And what I've told you is the truth. That's why I do these sessions, and that's why we record them, so everybody else can see these sessions. So listen, thanks very much for your question. It is always appreciated. And I'll move over to question 2, which I'm not sure if he's on the call, because I can't see him. So we might get Ken to read out the question. But I'll ask, is Mohammed Ikram with us on the call? I can't see him in the participants list. But I know he was due to be on the call.
No, that he's not joined us.
Okay. Ken, do you want to read Mr. Ikram's question out?
Yeah, sure. So his question is, what is your administration doing to protect the green land, and what action will be taken against the people who park their vehicles on grass verges?
Well, I know this off the top of my head already without even looking at the notes. It's really annoying when people park on grass verges and pavements, because not only does it do damage to the pavements and the verges, but we did introduce what's called a verge parking policy in the last couple of years, I believe. Problem is, we don't do enough to publicize it, in all honesty. But again, I can't make newspapers print what we tell them or get them to do it over and over. But I think the verge parking policy, without me actually looking at the date, but Adam might know, because Adam Payton, who's in charge of parking in the city, will give us chapter and verse. But it's not an offence to park a motor vehicle, with the exemption of an HGV on a grass verge, or pavement, unless it's causing an obstruction or there's a traffic regulation order in place prohibiting it already. Oh, here we go. July 18, there we go. Reading down the note, we introduced a policy which allows residents to apply for a Verge parking ban in their area if there's sufficient local support for it. Now, this policy has so far led to Verge parking bans being put in place in 34 locations. And I know Mr. Ikram lives in the Netherton area, Hake Road, I think. And I know he's been complaining about people parking and sending pictures, and Adam and his team are doing something about that. Seven of those requests came from residents. It's allowed our parking enforcement team to hand out parking charging notice to anyone breaching the ban after initial 2-week warning period. We've issued 400 penalty notices since 2018. I think somebody's calling me, but I'm going to get rid of them. Don't know who that was. You can't escape calls even when you're online. Anyway, so 400 penalty charging notices for vehicles parked in contravention of a prohibition of verge and/or pavement parking. So, right, Adam, do you want to add anything to that? Mr. Ikram's not online, but I'm sure he'll see this shortly.
Yeah, hi everyone. I just add that, yeah, the full information about our verge and pavement parking policy is on the council website. So if anyone wants to read any more into it, they can go to our website, and in the search box, if they put in verge parking, it will take them to a page that gives some more detail on what we can and can't do in relation to verge and pavement parking, what the police perhaps have to be involved with, and also, yes, the details of our policy and the steps a resident needs to follow in order to perhaps request a ban on verge parking in their area.
Right. Well, that's all seems very, very simple. So anybody watching back, if you have a problem with verge or pavement parking, all you need to do is get in touch with Adam. Who would it be parking services or somebody else is better placed? Do they come through your team?
No, there's a specific email address, so they can email us at vergeparking@peterborough.gov.uk. They can write to us at Verge Parking, Peterborough City Council, St Martin House, Fletton Keys, Peterborough, P2 HTI, or if they want to call the call centre 747474, they can leave their details and then someone will contact them back. Okay.
Right. I don't think there's much more we can talk about that. That's clearly explained. It might just be good to, Adam, how many enforcement officers do we have? Because I'm often asked about that. About 13 or 14 currently?
Yeah, we've got 13 civil enforcement officers at the moment who are patrolling and checking on the existing parking restrictions across the city. And they patrol both proactively and reactively. So they're proactively foot patrolling in areas where we have issues with, parking offences being committed, where there's a lot of restrictions, where there's a heavy flow of traffic or vehicle movement, and there's a high demand on curb space. But they're also working reactively, where residents might contact us with a persistent parking problem, and we can dispatch an officer to the location. So we've got officers who are mobile. And can visit, some of the more outlying areas of the city where perhaps there's less restrictions, but there are still offences being committed. Okay, and there are, just in terms of, the council is often criticised, which in turns means, you're getting the criticism, not definitely, by name, that we don't do enough enforcement. But do you want to give somebody or people who are watching an idea of how many tickets we actually produce pre-COVID? Has it gone down? Are we doing more? Just to give people an indication of, what work is actually going on by your team. Yeah, so a pre-COVID level, Peterborough City Council annually would issue 20,000 penalty charge notices. That's 20,000 parking offences. Obviously, as you say, we can't be everywhere all the time. So yes, we accept that there are occasions when people may commit offences and we're not able to capture them, but we'd hope to, catch enough people out that were a deterrent. So we're putting this thought into the back of people's minds that if they do park illegally, there's the chance they're going to come back to a penalty on their car. So it's a deterrent.
I'm sure, including myself, we've all had a parking ticket and thought, blast. We all have to uphold the law. It is irritating, I know, and people get annoyed about it, but there are good reasons for our parking rules in place. Also, I just want to close on the parking issue, and Adrian might want to comment, and Adam, you will know that I talked last year about introducing new powers that have become available. We register now, I think, in the new year, where we can do moving traffic violations through the use of camera technology, and we can catch more people contravening bus lanes and all sorts of other things. Adrian or Adam, what's it called? I've forgotten the name of the scheme.
There's a couple of things on the horizon over the next 12 months. One of them will be Part 6 of the Traffic Management Act, which will allow authorities outside of London to enforce moving traffic.
That's it. Yeah.
So that would be things like yellow box junctions, no entry signs, types of offences that are being committed by a vehicle that's still in motion as opposed to one that's stopped. And the other thing that's potentially on the horizon, although it's not confirmed yet, is that the government did do a consultation on pavement parking, and it was in London and nationally. So currently in London, it is an offence to put wheels on a pavement, any vehicle anywhere in the City of London. So there was a consultation on whether that or something similar should be rolled out across the rest of the country. So it's possible that in the next 12 to 18 months, there may be an announcement about that as well, which would give the council more powers.
Yeah, I think it was me that suggested via the officers that we should sign up and give an indication to government that we would take up those powers when they become available, because we do get criticised, and you're right, you can't be everywhere all of the time, but the cameras are generally ever present, and they will capture everything, and it's hard to sometimes explain to people why we can't do certain things, because we don't have the power currently, even though some people won't accept that. Nonetheless, it is fact. And it is frustrating when people are seen driving down one-way streets, or indeed we get a lot of activity in Cathedral Square, as you know, and Adam, I've reported many things to you, but we can't be everywhere at once. So look, thank you for the question, Mr. Ikram, even though you couldn't join us online. I'm sure you can watch this back. And just by way of a reminder, you're listening to watching Ask the Leader with me, Councillor Wayne Fitzgerald, leader here at Peterborough City Council. It's our monthly chat with local people and whoever about whatever they want to get off their chest and ask me or the team of officers. And all you have to do is email in asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. The team will handle it, and then you can decide whether you want to come on here and ask a question, just like I believe it is. Who is it? Rami. I've got that right, Rami, next, who's on the line here, question 3. And I'm not even going to attempt, no, I might do. Is it Quiche? I'm not sure how to do your surname.
Yes, Quiche. Yes, that's right.
Very good. Well, you're very welcome, Rami. Pleasure to see you. But by all means, ask your question and we'll see if we can give you an answer.
Thank you very much for allowing me to participate into this. My question was basically that I had been away from Peterborough for like a few years, and I've noticed that there's a lot of great increase in the lack of maintenance for the street furniture and barriers for the road as well. And I'm to be honest, I was very disappointed, sadly, to see my city and the lack of care in the maintenance in the city centre, and graffiti as well. And the speed cameras, some of it is not really in a good shape, or not well kept, or not functioning, and Lincoln Road areas, to be honest. And I felt what's going on, and I would hoping if anybody can just give me an answer. Wayne, please, can you just let me know what measures as well as being taken to attract new business to come to such a lovely city like Peterborough. It's very sad to see the what I've just seen in the last couple of weeks when I came down and just have a drive through, and that's it. Thank you.
Great. Look, these guys will tell you I'm one of the first to report graffiti or things that are broken. James knows, because I'm always calling him. He will come on to tell you in a minute about what work goes on and what we do.
Right.
But can I just first set a little scene for you? Which it starts where I started tonight's call, in the sense that we have to live within our means, Rami, and inevitably, when we've lost £55 million from our budget, you have to start prioritizing what you can do. And we have discussions about, even now in the budget, if you've been closely following, we talk about how many times we might clean the city centre, or hot wash, or the amount of times we might cut the grass, and so on. But I would also say to you, it's not the council, for example, that fly tips. Okay, it's your neighbours, your relatives, your friends, your family. It's those people around you that cause mess, not the council. And society has to go, take responsibility for how we live our lives. Because look, if I've got things that I need to dispose of, I take them down to the recycling centre, or I dispose of them in a mature way and considerate way. But sadly, some people don't, and it's the same as simple things like dropping litter. But I will say to you, inevitably, we have to cut our cloth accordingly. In terms of new businesses and the like, you would be wrong to think that Peterborough is not an attractive place to come, because we're hugely successful with both people wanting to come and live here, start a family here, get a job here, start a business here. The rate of growth here has been phenomenal, and that continues, which is why, and I often say this, it depends which day you ask somebody, we're the 5th or 4th fastest growing city in the country. Not my figures, these are Centre for City figures. These are facts. We are, one of the greenest places in terms of, we have the highest number of electric cars than anywhere else. We have the highest number of solar panels than anywhere else. We are punching well above our weight for the city that we are. James will come in a minute, because he's in charge of everything that we contract with Peterborough Limited. So whether it's refuse collection, street cleaning, parks, those kind of things, he'll be able to talk to you and answer any specific points you might have. But I'll read some of the notes I've got for you, if you don't mind, just to tease a few things out. So we worked extremely hard over the past decade to invest in the city centre. And if you look around it today, it's much improved compared to how it looked in the early 2010s. And I'm talking about the infrastructure, particularly, and the investment that's gone into the capital aspects of particularly in and around Cathedral Square. So, if you look in our city centre, there are very few voids. Most of the shops, bar the odd one or two, are full. We've got bars, cafes, restaurants, and shops. We developed a cafe culture style feel, particularly around Cathedral Square, as I said, and Bridge Street. So I'm proud of what we've done on that. So it's now a thriving, attractive area that's bounced back from the challenges of COVID. Now, I understand also news this week is that our economy is better than it was pre-COVID in terms of the city. So that's a really important point. And it's going to be enhanced when we get our new university and our plans for a new market, a modern day market, in Bridge Street, which, needs the footfall to help traders as well. We're also looking at all businesses in the city centre. We've got a business I nearly said imprisonment, a business improvement district approved, which again, if you've been following what's going on, and that starts in April, which is where businesses all contribute to, helping boost the city centre economy particularly. And that's going to be a £1.8 million invested in the city, over and above the work being done by the council, because believe me, we're stretched in budget terms. And on the subject of graffiti, yes, there is graffiti in the city centre, like in many towns and cities. But one thing we do, anything offensive or that's, not really there, is cleaned immediately. But keeping up with the rest of it, in my own ward, we had up every single bus shelter along Bretton Way, graffitied, mindless vandalism, but we have to find the money to clean that up. Fly tipping, as I just touched on, essentially, if people didn't do it, then it wouldn't be a problem. So we have to look to people about fly tipping. By the council don't have to do a good job in picking it up in terms of challenging circumstances. You know, we're out there, the teams are out there, you've got to give them credit. And I often say to people, hang on a minute, it's not the council that fly tips, it's people who you live next door to. So we need to ask people to respect their places they live and visit. And, you know, I'm sure you understand exactly what I mean.
Absolutely.
When fly
Yeah.
tipping or littering is on public land, our maintenance teams clean it up. Quite often what you'll find, Rami, is we can't go on the land because it's private land, or the graffiti is on private land. People don't understand we're not allowed to go on private land and clean up graffiti or litter. So that's one thing that some people maybe don't understand. But we'd like to do more cleaning. I did say the other day, you know, fine, I'd like to cut your grass more. But then other people go, no, don't cut the grass. Biodiversity. You mustn't cut the grass. So we're in a no-win situation. Or, you know, we'd like to clean more, or we'd like to do this more. People used to say, why don't you empty the bin every week? Well, in actual fact, if we did, it's worse for the environment because it doesn't help us recycle. You know, it's a real complex situation, waste disposal and waste treatment, and it costs millions. But again, you know, would you believe that we're taking £250,000 a month back in electricity sales from the rubbish we incinerate, which all goes back into taxpayers' pockets? We had so much grief getting that going to start with, but you know, it shows it was the right decision. Clean street furniture. I was in Bridge Street yesterday. I thought, oh, there's a lot of pigeon muck here. Why haven't we cleaned that off? Well, again, budgets. You know, budgets. But there are people regularly, a couple of guys going around the city centre, benches and barriers and stuff like that, spillages. They are cleaned on a weekly basis. But I'd like to see them cleaned 3 times a week. I just can't afford to do it. I just can't afford to do it. So all the high footfall areas, we are increasingly looking to clean more, but it is part of the budget process. And if you want to input into that, by the way, you just go to our website /budget. And if you or anybody else spots littering, graffiti or fly tipping, report it 7474. If you spot it, shop them. So Rami, any questions on any of my rambling? Sorry, it was a bit long. And I'll ask James to come in for anything else. Did you have anything specific from that?
No, not after that. Thank you very much, Leader, for this. Just made everything clear for me. Thank you.
So James, do you want to just give Rami a sense of shall we say, the challenges we're facing in finance terms, where we've gone perhaps in budget to where we are? It's just less, but we're trying to do things in a different way and keep things. It's like spinning plates and juggling balls. But James,
it's definitely thanks, Lee. So across the city, we know we've definitely got challenges around litter, graffiti, fly tipping, but as the leader said, obviously it's not our teams creating this mess. They're trying to combat it. And I would say we've got very dedicated and proud members of staff who are proud when they leave a street and they leave it clean. So some areas they can clean it in the morning, they come back later in the day and it's already littered. And how demoralising that must be for those members of staff, because they want the city to look good. So we are fortunate that we've got this dedicated workforce that help us. We're also working a lot with communities. So we do a lot with communities around litter picking, and we do assemblies in schools to try and educate from an early age about fly tipping, littering, and what negative effects that has on the city. But like the leader said, our budgets have decreased year on year on cleanse and open space. So we have to look outside the box of how we can do things differently. So for instance, a few years back, we moved to more mechanicalised cleaning. So in the city centre, you see the smaller sweepers that go around, because they can clean it a lot quicker than what the man with the barrow used to with the sweeping it up. So we're always looking at initiatives to try and improve the cleaning, but do it in a cost-effective way.
One of the other things, Rami, just to bring it to kind of full circle, one of the things we're asking people to do, and it's part of something we call Think Communities, which means people like yourself and others, and there's a great group called the Wombles, that take ownership of issues or areas where they live, because they know we can't afford to do them, and you know, get their own little groups together, and you know, which is great, because we are saying to people that, you know, okay, step up and do community work or community litter picks and stuff like that. I know it's slightly different in the inner urban areas like the Lincoln Road area that you refer to, which is a great multicultural, very vibrant place. Yeah. But, you know, different places for different people. different cultures, mean different things. That's not criticism, it's just reality. And perhaps some, should take more care of the environment that they live in, but it doesn't mean that community groups can't come together and take some of that burden off the taxpayer. Because, what I would say to people also say, oh, well, we'd like this and we'd like this and we'd like this. And I go, well, that's all well and fine. But would you like to pay £131 more on your council tax to bring us to average unitary? And they go, oh, well, I'm not sure about that. Because that, in reality, Rami, is where we're at. Peterborough pays on average on a Band D property £131 a year less than the average council taxpayer elsewhere. So we must be realistic about that. But as soon as you want to put council tax up, people aren't so keen on how many times you want to cut their grass or empty the bins. They'll go, no, we live with it, because it's a big jump. So that's the difference in funding, and it's frustrating for me because I want to deliver good services and I want to invest in the city, and I want people to have a good, healthy lifestyle and be proud of the neighbourhoods they live in and the people around them. So I hope that gives you some comfort. We are trying, but it is a challenging task ahead of us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for taking part. By all means, stay on if you want to, or you can slip away, whichever you like. So I would remind everybody that we're in the first of the 2022 season of Ask the Leader. This is January's edition. And if you want to take part in a future edition, perhaps February or whenever, whatever your question is about, all you need to do is email asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. And I am Wayne Fitzgerald, leader of Peterborough City Council. We'll move to question 4, which I think is from Caroline Green, who can't be here tonight. So Ken from the communications team, who will be signing autographs, no doubt, because he's doing so many questions, will ask the question on Caroline's behalf. Take it away, Ken.
Sure. Okay. So Caroline asks, I'd be interested to understand how the council can go ahead with the proposal of the fence around open space in Warrington under the guise of safeguarding at a time of such financial strain and scrutiny in clear conscience. It is my understanding that this action is neither noted by Ofsted as a safeguarding risk or supported by the community in which it will be placed. So following your blog post on the 6th of January, I did not see how this expenditure is either vital or of added value, which appears to be your spending criteria moving forward. And she goes on to say, I also find this a bitter pill to swallow when it is deemed the exercise facilities in Warrington have had to be closed due to the financial strain on the council and the savings that need to be made. But it's seen appropriate to spend well over £100,000 on a fence, installation and professional consultations without a strong argument for the need. So could you please confirm if the council are contractually obliged to a third party for this work, as at an earlier period they thought they were clear to proceed with the fence, and I believe that the council were days away from proceeding. And she finishes by asking, so could you please let me know your stance on this action and your view on the expenditure?
Well, I think I would say to Caroline, she's got that wrong in terms of, as I outlined before, on the Warrington Leisure Centre or gym closure. We've certainly made it clear it's not been temporarily closed for financial reasons. It's more of an operational level, as has been explained in our first call tonight. So I won't go over all ground. What I will do, though, and again, I'm not going to give a view personally, because it is subject to a planning matter. But what I would say, we have been open and honest, as I said before, about the reasons for looking to install a fence at Warrington Fields, and that is due to safeguarding concerns expressed by Ken Stimson School. No other party. We, unfortunately, are caught up in the middle as the local authority. One, because we would have to determine the planning application, and I believe it is our land. Now, in terms of legislation compliance, the council is under various statutory obligations in relation to land held for education purposes. Under Regulation 10 of the School Provision, England Regulations 2012, suitable outdoor space must be provided in order to enable 1, physical education to be provided to pupils in accordance with the school curriculum, and 2, pupils to play outside. Under Section 175 of the Education Act 2002, 1, a local authority shall make arrangements for ensuring that their education functions are exercised with a view to safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children, and 2, the governing body of the maintained school shall make arrangements for ensuring that their functions relating to the conduct of the school are exercised with a view to safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children who are pupils at the school. So it's quite technical and wordy, but you can play it back as many times as you like. And I am assured the information I'm presenting here by officers tonight would be factual and accurate. Under Keeping Children Safe in Education 2021 statutory guidance for schools and colleges, all staff have a responsibility to provide a safe environment which children can learn. In addition, under Section 131, education settings are directly responsible for ensuring they have the appropriate level of security protection procedures in place. So, the council feel that the best way to ensure both the council and the school are meeting their statutory responsibilities with regards to keeping children safe is to enclose part of Warrington Fields with a 2-metre high fence and limit public access to the area to times outside of school use. So, for example, in the evenings, weekends, and during school holidays. The next steps in the decision-making process will be the publication of the Cabinet Member Decision Notice by the Cabinet Member for Children's Services, Education, Skills and University, and that is Councillor Lynn Ayres. So you can always contact her, by the way, with any thoughts or views that you might have. That will be lynn.ayres@peterborough.gov.uk. The recommendation will include that the council should seek planning permission for a material change of use of the part of Warrington Field which would be enclosed by the fence. The decision on whether to approve the planning application and grant approval to enclose that part of Warrington Fields would then rest with the council's planning committee, which, as I said earlier, is a quasi-judicial cross-party group that meets periodically to discuss planning applications. Anyone with an interest in the project will there have an opportunity to submit comments on the planning application. And again, if you feel strongly about the issue, please do have your say. You can write in, or indeed you can register to speak at the planning application itself. If planning permission is granted, implementation of the plans would be dependent on approval from the council's cabinet to fund the cost of purchasing and erecting the fence. If funding is approved, the council would then place an order with the company for the materials and associated work. The council is not under any contractual obligation with a third party currently. And again, I would explain regarding the comments about council's financial pressures, the difference between capital and revenue. So this would be a capital project, not a revenue project, I suspect, and therefore would have to be budgeted into our capital program, which would need sign off by the finance team, and it may well already be in the current budget, and I would assume it is, because it's been on the agenda for a while. If there's anything else that I haven't answered, please feel free to come back to me or indeed Councillor Ayres, as I said, and get yourself involved in the planning process so that you can feel you can have your say. But like with all these things, there's always a for and against, and you have to take the rough with the smooth and trust in the people you've elected to do the right thing, which you may not always agree with, but they are only trying to do the right thing. So I think we'll move on to question number 5 tonight, which is our final question, and we're closing in on the home straight. So again, the question is from Neil Webb, who's not here tonight. So Ken, do you want to read this one out as well?
Yeah, sure. So Neil says, there is a small community room attached to Hampton Hargate Primary School called the Hampton Hargate Community Room, which is currently operated by the City Council. Now, according to the School Chair of Governors and a member of the Council, this community room is in the middle of a transition between the Council and the school for the school to become the operator of this community venue. This transition period has been going on now for at least the last 2 years. Neil adds, sadly, my local scout group lost the use of the venues we were using within Hampton over COVID, and we were unable to find a venue within the community and have had to move to a school within Woodston. So currently this Hampton community room sits empty, yet our scout group is having to meet out of the Hampton community area. So he ends by asking, can the leader of the council please inform me when this room will be able to be used by the Hampton community, or give us permission to temporarily use the venue while this transition takes place?
Yeah, so I'm happy to reply to you, Neil, on this. It's always disappointing when things like this happen. There's been so much disruption, particularly over the last 2 years. We've experienced it in the council with disruption about meetings and being postponed or not being able to access things. So I understand how disappointing it must be, and that it's taking so long to negotiate the community usage of those community rooms at Hampton Hargate Primary School. Officers from the communities and property teams have been working throughout the period with the school, the parish council and ward councillors to develop a community user agreement that can overcome the safeguarding issues and practicalities of access to a building that is within school grounds. Whatever is put in place for community use must be sustainable and agreed by both sides, which is taking some time. However, the council has made steps to overcome some of the sticking points by completing required maintenance works, which needed undertaking, and we will continue our discussions with the school to bring about a satisfactory conclusion to this problem in the future. Also, we understand that you've been working with the local councillors to secure a location for your Scouts group, which is great news, and a number of alternative local venues have been put forward. So I wish you well with that, and keep the dialogue with your local councillors, because they are the people with the eyes and ears on the ground. They can seek the help of officers within the council, whether it's in our communities team, planning or licensing and safeguarding. They have it all at their fingertips. So Neil, thank you for your question tonight. And thank you everyone for your questions tonight. And thank you to our officers, Ken, Adrian, James and Adam, who have joined us tonight for taking part in Ask the Leader. And it is more or less it. I'll just remind you, get your questions in for the next one. It'll be on the 22nd of February. It's normally the last Tuesday of the month we do these. They last about an hour, which is about an hour. And all you need to do is send them to asktheleader@peterborough.gov.uk. And don't worry if you don't want to come on the screen. We can ask you a question or you'll get a reply on email. But for those that do want to come on the screen, you're always welcome. And we can take your questions or just answer them. So again, thank you for your time. And I'll bid you a farewell for now until we meet in about a month's time. Thanks.